But as an undermatured 40-year-old recovering emo kid, a song where a dude... You're just... What?
I'm sorry. You're
just reading it off the...
Well, it's like, it sounds like you're about to give a speech. Like, as an undermatured 40-year-old. Give it to us, Mike. Give it to us.
This is the episode. I gotta get the video working finally.
Oh my God. I'm weeping. Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that thinks you're worthwhile, and no one can ever take that away from you. I'm Miranda Simmons.
And I'm Mike Altman, and I needed to hear that today.
It's the truth, Ruth. You are worthwhile.
Oh, thank you.
Everything's going to be...
Everything's going to be...
I don't know that everything's going to be okay, but we're in it together.
Yeah.
That's what I've got for you.
That's what I keep telling people. I'm like, all we got is each other.
But we are enough.
That's true.
Okay.
So we're two religious studies professors trying to understand all of these cult documentaries that you can't stop binge watching. And interesting choice today, Miranda.
Look at how you're feeling so worthwhile that you're not even going to do your support bit. That's good.
Everyone knows.
I feel like it's a step in the right direction.
I think
follow us on all the socials.
Yes. If you're listening,
if you're even able to exist in the social media world.
I don't feel
like we need to give space for.
Yes. I don't feel like we're a gateway to podcasting. Like, I don't think we're anyone's first podcast. So they know what to do to support a podcast.
That's correct.
We're not going to insult their intelligence by acting like they don't know how to find us on all the socials at Cult Favorite Pod.
That's true. Okay. So it is an interesting choice. Thank you very much. I chose the documentary this week, and it is Netflix's The Hatchet, Wielding Hitchhiker. The content warning is that we will have some discussion of sexual assault, including rape and child abuse. But here's the quick context, because there are some that we've dealt with that are not like about cults in traditional sense of the word. But I thought that this one needed a little prelude, a little disclaimer, because I think that in this case, the story is like an interesting inversion of like the cult leader follower dynamic, but with the same inattention to structural context. So in this case, we've got a charismatic figure who is called he's got so much charisma, and you can't help but love the guy, who people literally follow online and like want to go find. Like, they are seeking him out. Right. Yeah. They are seeking to serve him online, and he's not really interested in the fame and money. So in this case, his own mental health needs and problematic statements or behavior go kind of unaddressed, so long as he conforms to the hero celebrity figure that people want him to be, first of all. Second of all, because he doesn't conform to that figure, people turn on him and revise their original response and say that, like, actually, no, he was nuts or evil all along. Right. So I think that there's just like this interesting, instead of the person who is charismatic and wants some kind of, he like has this nefarious end to begin with, and so abuses people's trust and gains a following by virtue of that charisma only to hurt people. Kai the Hitchhiker is an interesting kind of inversion of that dynamic, where he is sought out and then, pilloried.
Yeah. I like that we have a thesis statement.
Yeah.
Going into
no,
this.
I feel like I feel like there's I think that's important. Do you know you've seen Life of Brian, right? That Monty Python movie. Have you seen that movie?
I don't know that I've seen bits and pieces. I don't know that I actually ever sat down and watched the whole thing.
Oh, it's so terrific.
All the way through. I probably caught it on Comedy Central.
So it's a spoof of organized religion, but there's this really great moment where Brian, the like nominal messiah, says to this crowd of people who have like congregated around him, they're like, "You're the Messiah," and he's like, I'm really
Right.
not the Messiah. Please leave me alone.
Yeah.
And then they're like, only the real Messiah would say that he's not the Messiah.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, well then I'm the Messiah. And they're like, you are. Like, I feel, I kept thinking of that moment in Life and Brian. So
Yeah.
I feel like this is kind of a similar like dynamic. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That movie holds a weird place because Holy Grail,
Yes.
youth group favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
Sure.
did not like, I mean, at least the one that I was in, but then Life of Brian did not make the cut.
I mean,
Not sure why.
yeah, you are. Okay, so what did you know about Kai? So
Yeah.
Kai the Hitchhiker.
Kai the
is
Hitchhiker.
How people talk about him, which
if you
I
had
don't
said
love.
like,
But
yeah, if you had said, do you remember Kai the Hitchhiker? I would have been like, no. If you'd have said, do you remember the guy who looks like Zach De La Roca and said, smash, smash, smash? I would have been like, oh, that guy.
sorry, you sucked.
Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay. Like, whispering into my microphone. Wait, right. Okay.
Yeah, so I remembered that.
Okay.
I think you
Oh, I remember it so well.
were a bit of a deeper, had more interaction than I did with this. Like I remember the video now. I was like, yeah, that guy. But that's all I remembered.
Okay. Yeah, I remember it really well, but the thing is, like, I remember the video, and I remember like little moments of it where the reporter is like, you know, how old are you? And he's like,
Yeah.
I can't call it. Like, there were like these little moments that really landed and stuck with me. But then I didn't follow what happened after the fact. I was never a really big like Jimmy Kimmel
Yeah.
show watcher or fan. And that was a big, you know, like part of his life
It was
on
his height, his apex.
Yes, that was the ostensible apex of his post-viral video. And I did not know really at all about what would then become a murder trial 3 months later.
Yeah.
So I remember very like viscerally the moment, like the interview and like when it blew up.
Yeah.
It was 2013, you know, so like where were we 12 years ago? I don't know.
It was
just hanging
February
out.
2013.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like,
I was on the job market trying to
oh yeah.
end up here.
Cool. Yay.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
got the offer like in March, like around this time
Really?
that year.
That year.
Uh-huh.
Neat.
So that's what I was doing, killing time on the internet. Not
Solid. You had other fish to fry.
yeah.
My life looked...
I was probably trying to. Yeah, I was probably. You know what? I actually, this makes sense. I can remember because I was at my little tiny IKEA desk at the top of the stairs in our house in Atlanta, where I was working on my dissertation and probably clicking on this video to avoid doing that. Doing so.
Okay. Here's a 5-minute synopsis. And we are, as ever, I'm going to try to keep it to 5 minutes. We'll see.
All right.
Okay. Here's what gets covered.
Okay. I'm getting an alarm out.
This is the story of Kai Lawrence. His legal name is Caleb McGilvery. He's from Edmonton, Alberta. He says in that interview, though, that he's from like so West Virginia. He's from somewhere in West Virginia. Anyway, Kai Lawrence rose to viral fame in February 2013 when he was interviewed in Fresno, California, and touted as a hero, like a would-be but not wannabe star, you know, of late night and reality
Yes,
TV.
A common man.
Only to be convicted of first-degree murder 3 months later. He's now serving a 57-year sentence in a maximum security prison. So that's what gets covered, is his kind of entree into viral stardom and his eventual fall. What does not get covered, among other things, is the just vortex of issues that are involved in the trial itself, the massive conflicts of interest that were apparently present. We get zero context regarding Kai's defense and the fact that he spent, like, we get a summary of his story,
Yeah.
but nothing to do with his defense. The fact that he spent 4.5 years in solitary confinement pre-trial while he was waiting for what was promised to be, you know, his right to a speedy trial. He did not have that. He waited for more than 5 years, and 4.5 of that was spent in solitary confinement. And we also don't get a lot of nuance regarding his background, we do hear a little bit about his childhood, but in terms of like his mental health issues, his substance abuse issues, like anything that we only hear about what people presume to be his need for material wealth. Surely he needs money.
Yeah.
Surely he needs fame, because don't we all?
Yes, we all.
But we don't really hear a lot about, like, we hear he was super intoxicated, but no attempt to do anything about that.
Yeah.
You know? So,
No one's like, let's help this guy get figured out.
correct.
They're just like, let's give
What
him.
are the resources that he needs
Yes.
structurally?
Yes.
We say,
we'll
like,
give him money and a reality TV deal instead.
And apparently a limo full of weed. That is a literal phrase.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what happens in the documentary. We meet reporter Jessup Breisbeck. He has done just fine for himself through all of this, by the way. We see him like cleaning his big pool and swimming in it. I don't know. He's
He's the evening news anchor for Milwaukee's CBS 58.
Is he now?
The home, yeah.
Sure. He was a sports anchor in Fresno when all of this went down in 2013. So I don't know what sports reporters in local news agencies make, but
Not a ton.
He's doing fine.
Well, no, he's big guy. He's the big guy.
So he's made out pretty well in all of this, but we hear his story of an unlikely interviewee turned hero, Kai. Here's what Kai says at the very beginning of this interview. I'm going to tell the story in a second, but I do feel like his opening is really important because it's really what I think. Well, it's the first impression of Kai Lawrence, you know? And so Jessup is at the scene of this car accident, but also hate crime. And he says, hey, what happened here? And Kai says, first of all, I came straight out of Dogtown and I'm surfing it up and now I'm here. But before I begin, he looks into the camera. And so he's making eye contact with you, the viewer, and says, no matter what you've done, you deserve respect. Even if you make mistakes, you're lovable. And it doesn't matter your looks, skills, or age, size, anything, you're worthwhile. No one can ever take that away from you. Now. And then he turns back to Jessup and starts telling him the story.
Yeah.
Here's the story. He's picked up by Jet Simmons McBride because he's hitchhiking. He's an unhoused person who is like hanging out in California. He gets picked up by Jet McBride. McBride starts talking about being Jesus Christ and he can do whatever. And he's like spouting racist ideology. And in the process of this conversation, like later we will hear that they rolled a joint together. There is back and forth about that we will get into, but he crashes a car into a black utility worker and pins him against his parked truck. Stays in the car. Kai runs out. A woman runs up to help this person who's been pinned against his truck. But then McBride gets out of the car to stop this woman from helping. He places her in a bear hug and...
That's your 5 minutes, sorry.
Shit. He's this big dude. So Kai tries to get him to release her by hitting him in the head with this hatchet that he's got. Twice with a blunt and once with a blade. Jessup talks to him about what happened. He uploads the full interview on YouTube and it becomes this instant sensation. Everybody wants a piece. So Jessup starts fielding all of these calls and emails. People are looking for Kai and making offers. He reaches out to Kai and says, here's the deal. People want to make you rich and famous. So I want to present these offers to you because he's like the, I don't know, big brother protector kind of role.
It's weird.
Anyway, so Kai is like, I don't know, man. I'd rather smoke weed and hang out in the Bay Area. And so, so he tells that to, among other people, this brand maker for Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa
wants to produce
says,
a reality pilot with him.
Correct. Lisa says, no, no, he has to want to be famous.
Right.
Everybody wants to be famous.
Right.
Tell him we will give him a limo full of weed.
There we go.
Jessup says this is what will happen. And he's like, oh, okay, well then fine. Like, I mean, his priorities are always like spot on.
I thought that was going to be our opener, the podcast.
Oh, I see. A limo full of weed.
Yeah.
No, because it's irresponsible to offer that to anyone. Oh my God.
Or the podcast that won't give you.
Oh, there we are. But then that just makes us sound like downers. You cannot win.
Okay.
I do not feel...
There's no good way to handle a limo full of weed.
There it is. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So... So his priorities are always consistent. And so he responds, like in the affirmative once he gets that offer. That is when they could have left him alone, but no. So that's when we start getting some glimpses of they find him, but he's intoxicated. He is giving his stuff to people who have it worse off than he does. He signs a contract with the Kardashian person in like hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
He pees on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Pees on a lot of stuff.
The Jimmy Kimmel sign. Like he's acting erratically, and he is not behaving in the way that we would expect someone who's like super grateful to be given the chance of being rich and famous to respond. So Lisa says, like there's something kind of dangerous at this point. Anyway, he's on the Kimmel show. Cops pick him up to be a witness in the McBride attempted murder hate crime trial, or they serve him with a subpoena. So after the show, he goes up north. He's everywhere online. He's getting recognized. He's all over the internet. And he is a witness in this trial.
Yeah.
So he says at the trial, like, yeah, okay, I roll a joint with Jet McBride. People say later that it is laced. Tests would show, I feel it important to say, that there is no evidence of anything except marijuana.
The lead singer of the Redcoats.
I did not know that band.
Me either.
Know that band,
no. But yeah, he's the one who says that he told him it was lace.
Correct. So that's the only. So we spend a lot of time hearing that story, but we don't have any follow up about what apparently the evidence does not actually show. So in May 2013, Kai posts about childhood trauma that he experienced. Jessup talks about the second interview that he had with him, where Kai, like, on camera but off interview, like, talks about being raped, being locked in a cage as a kid. And we hear from Kai's first cousin and mother, and they complicate Kai's story a bit, but also in the process affirm the fact that he was locked in a room with dark blankets on the windows and kept from playing outside. And I mean, so it's literally and figuratively pretty dark.
Yeah.
He gets sent home to a home for troubled teens at one point because his mom can't deal with him anymore. His cousin will talk about like these kind of manic rages that he goes into because he can't tell whether he's being laughed at or laughed with. Like, so if you can't gauge that sort of social interaction and you have a violent response to it, there's something there that probably could be, I don't know, assisted with structural resources. But, okay, so we're in 2013 now. He's posted this Mother's Day post about this, kind of messed up childhood. This is 3 months after the infamous Fresno interview. An attorney called Joseph Galfi is dead. He's killed by Kai. And Kai never makes any statement contradicting that.
Right.
But here's his story. Galfi picked him up. Kai spends the night with him. Like they drink some beers and whatever, and they hang out. But he says, like, I'm sleepy, I'm going to go to bed. But then he wakes up in the morning with some evidence of sexual assault. He leaves, Galfi, because he doesn't confront Galfi about it. He just wants to get out. Galfi gives him a train ticket or a bus ticket. But his plans of where to stay that night fall through. He's in this like park that he hears is kind of dangerous. Galfy had told him like, call me if you ever need a place to stay. So he calls him and goes back that night. This is a big part of like the prosecutorial and police perspective of like, well, why would you go back if blah, blah, blah. But as we know, like there are lots of complexities that would inform that dynamic that make it not that cut and dry. Anyway, he calls Galfy. He goes back to the house. That night, Kai wakes up and sees Joe Galfy trying to pull down his pants. At that point, Kai hits him. He doesn't remember exactly how, but he responds violently to defend himself and runs away. We see, so that's Kai's story. We see a police video that I find really, really troubling, where they, are talking to him. They get his nutshell statement. He asks for a lawyer. He's like, I guess I should talk to a lawyer. They're like, okay, cool. We'll let the record show, blah, blah, blah. We're going to take off. Do you have any questions for us? He starts asking questions, and then they're like, we can't talk to you. You asked for a lawyer. Bye. It's very frustrating. An autopsy and the medical examiner would show a pretty violent scene that like Joe had been stomped to death, perhaps, instead of just hit. So again, it's complicating Kai's story, perhaps contradicting his story. But this is when like the public is turning against him. Kai is waiting 5 years for a trial. It finally happens in 2019. He gets convicted. The text at the end of the documentary. So we hear like, well, here's the evidence that contradicts his story, but we don't really get any context about anything else.
They don't do any new interview with Kai or anything like that.
And he seems happy to talk.
Yeah.
Only too happy to talk.
I mean,
so the text at the end of the documentary is that Jet McBride, the original like person who picked him up and then rammed into this utility worker, was found guilty of assault with a deadly weapon, sentenced to 9 years in a mental health facility. Police toxicology tests on McBride found no narcotics other than marijuana in his system. So we get that little disclaimer, but no time spent on it. Then meanwhile, Caleb McGilvery, Kai, is currently serving 57 years in a maximum security prison in New Jersey. And that he, appealed and was rejected, and he continues with attempts to appeal. That's what happened. What do you want to talk about?
Wow.
So, it was more like, I don't know, 8 minutes?
Yeah, it's fine.
Was it 12? Okay, go.
So, like the couple things that jumped out to me was, and I don't know, I looked it up and they're actually like 3 years apart. But in my head, this was part of the same world as do you remember the guy in Mobile who went viral with the video about they're climbing in the windows and snatching people up and they got auto-tuned? Like this is all part of that thing, right?
The memification of personal narrative.
The Jessup guy calls him a walking meme, which like if you stop and think about that is just kind of wild. Yeah. Because it's so there's a thing about this in terms of like 2010s internet culture, like the early 2010s internet culture, where there's a lot of, they talk about the double rainbow guy. Right. They talk about, there's, what was the kid from the dentist or whatever. Like there was all of these early 2010s phenomena that pop up. And it got me thinking, this is the tweet from Pixelated Boat, and this is 2016, but the whole internet loves milkshake duck, a lovely duck that drinks milkshakes. 5 seconds later, we regret to inform you that the duck is racist. Like the whole milk. So in some ways, I immediately watched this like, oh, this is like a milkshake duck story, and we're fascinated by like where do these walking memes are actually people, and so there's like the double edged thing of like, how did this person become a meme, and then what happens afterwards that then becomes part of the story. Do you think that this could have happened now? Like it still relies on a local news station, people watching the news, and like people watching the news, Facebook being the kind of presence that it was. Like
Could there be a Kai in the age of TikTok? I wonder.
I mean, I think that there are still things that go viral.
Sure.
But I think the mechanisms are different in a way. I mean, the actually just came to mind as we were talking. There was a story in The Athletic a couple of days ago, yesterday, about this young woman at Ole Miss who had this horrible rumor spread about her that she had slept with her boyfriend's father. Ugh. And it jumped from just Old Miss, I think it was like on Yik Yak or some other toxic social media, whatever. But it got picked up by, do you know who Pat McAfee is?
Yeah.
He has a YouTube show.
I don't know. That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, so
I'm bad with names, obviously.
He's an ESPN personality, does ESPN college football stuff, but has a YouTube show that's sort of like...
No, I don't know who this is. Maybe it just sounds like...
Gen Z... It's sort of like Gen Z Howard Stern on YouTube, okay. But it's also on ESPN as well.
I definitely know. I was thinking, like, is that a comedian?
He's also sometimes a WWE TV announcer.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I don't know who that is.
So he talks about this story, which has nothing to do
about this college student.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with sports. Like, literally an NFL scout guy on to combine guy on to talk about the draft.
Messing with these cords.
It's okay. Someone's knocking at the door. We're leaving all of this in. But he no. in out of nowhere just opens the show, never uses the woman's name, but talking about this story. He's got like his little goon squad of like, chuckleheads that laugh along with him about everything. And so then this, once this gets picked up like this, now very quickly people find out her name, people very quickly, and now like she's just getting horrible messages and has to move off campus and has to take off her, it's like, sure. Life is destroyed in those ways.
Sure.
And it's not the Kai story in that, like, oh, look at this adorable hatchet wielding hitchhiker, but it is a way that, in the same way, we still do the forms are different, but there still are these media outlets that can sort of pull somebody out of obscurity.
Sure.
In these ways. Is it as shared? I don't know. I mean, like, I read about it because someone posted it on a wrestling Reddit because Pat McAfee does WWE commentary. But so maybe there's all these niche places it goes, and like people go viral on TikTok. I mean, there was the whole Demure thing, 6 months ago. So that happens, but right. But I don't think it's the same. It is that particular thing about local, like, because we're talking about kind of very legacy media, like local news. TV producer for a reality TV show.
Yes.
Like it is a that world. Late night. Right.
What did he call himself? Or anyway, somebody who works for late night.
Yeah. Which also what is the audience for viral videos? Was it the same then, as it is now? Especially if you're talking about local, So I don't know.
But he's still a product of a moment.
Yes.
He's a certain kind of figure.
And a moment, I think that a lot of people now, 10 years later, have a lot of nostalgia for that internet. Right? Like, I hear a lot of stuff, I don't know, about how the internet used to be fun and there used to be so much more stuff. Like, it was, like, do you remember Vine? The short Twitter video app? It's amazing.
No, this is an episode where we're just like coming up against all of my like technological limits, including my relationship with these cords. So thanks. Oh, see, a friend in need and a friend indeed.
Yes.
Okay.
But no, I think there is a nostalgia for a pre Elon Musk Twitter and like that era of the internet was just felt so much more like new and interesting, and anything could happen. And
there was a specific kind of narrative arc. Like, the guy who works for the Jimmy Kimmel show talks about how any good story has a villain and a hero and someone in distress, and like, I don't know, like the format also seemed to entertain that full storyline with these characters, but in the process we make them into really
We
like,
do.
Like just unidimensional
And
characters.
like related to this is like what do we mean when we say this talk of charisma? That was something that I was curious about. Like,
Yes,
he was
sir.
so charismatic. Like,
Yep.
what
Just full of charisma.
does that mean? Right? Like,
It seems to mean, and this is part of why I mean, you know, as ever, I'm always interested in like case studies for something that could live in the zip code of a cult documentary
Right.
that isn't really about a religious group. And part of, and I also am forever uninterested in the question of like, is it really this or is it really that? Because there is definitely a tendency when people are telling this story, certainly in the documentary, and then on the other side of the coin, which we will get to in a minute, of like people saying, you know, he was a dangerous sociopath, or he is a person who has been done wrong and here's the real story, kind of thing. I'm not really interested in that. But I do think that the idea of charisma that creates some kind of through line through these different data sets is like, it is some, I think that charisma is about the reaction people have to a person rather than some characteristic dwelling within the person. It seems like charisma is everything to do with the impulse that people feel to follow you or to like stack you up as a celebrity or as a leader of any kind.
Yeah.
And that could be religious or, you know, celebrity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
that's what charisma seems to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right about it being the way people react to the supposedly charismatic person, but that doesn't explain, like, I can see why when you see the initial video, the initial interview, I think there's a way that might strike a chord that feels charismatic. But if you compare like Kai to like various charismatic cult leaders, there's always this moment in the cult docs where they're like, oh, you would just talk to him and you would just feel like he totally knew you, and you know, you could get you to do whatever you, right? Like there's this thing where where the charismatic person is almost a cipher for the desires of the other person, right?
1,000%.
Right. And I think we see that in, you know, his opening message, like of all that, but it doesn't, you see how it falls apart during the other times people like very early on in the doc, it's like, well, but then he did this or he said this, right? And so there's a way that like the charisma only exists insofar as the audience is mediated in some way from Kai or whomever, whereas the other charismatic figures actually the charisma works. It's almost a skill set that Kai didn't have.
Okay, so
to be able to be that cipher in the room in front of someone.
Yes.
Right, in a particular way.
I think that we want that we love an outsider and an underdog, and we want our outsiders to be like, you know, goofy loners who buck convention, so long as they perform a script of outsiderness appropriately.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there is a proper way to follow that script. And I think that the religious leaders that you're talking about are performing that in a way that follows through.
Yeah.
On like, I am, but they also were out to spread a message and gain people's allegiance, you know, in good faith or bad faith or whatever, but like, regardless of whether you think they're evil or just deluded themselves or just I don't know, like, this is not that. This is like if Bartleby the Scrivener, did you have to read that in school? Like,
Probably.
the Herman Melville.
Yeah.
short story where like this dude is at the office and he's told to do his job and he just keeps saying, I would prefer not to.
Yeah.
I would prefer not to.
Okay.
I would prefer not to. And then ultimately,
That's how I feel today.
Like they cannot get him to do anything. It's the Office Space. Isn't that the movie?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. Anyway, but ultimately it's his like it continues on into like his death. Like it's you there's no
right.
He says no into he creates his own oblivion. He speaks his own entropy into existence.
Right.
And this is like if Bartleby the Scrivener was like, yeah, put in front of a TV camera and asked to be a reality star, because people want Kai to be grateful for the opportunities and the prospective wealth that they inside the mainstream offer to him.
Yeah.
I'm cool with you being a goofy outsider who's super cute and adorable and giving me these like messages of love that make me feel good. So long as you so long as you participate in the value system of the mainstream that I represent, offering these resources to you.
Yeah.
And if you cannot accept these resources, but he's like literally outside the mainstream.
Yeah.
So,
you know,
so then we retroactively change our original narrative or perception of what we find appealing in the first place. Because the original story is he's a hero who helps someone in peril.
Yeah. And
the eventual story is like he's an obvious and violent sociopath. We knew he was dangerous from the beginning.
When when the thing that made him viral was yelling smash, smash, smash.
Correct. And talking about, have you ever been in a situation like this before? This is not what gets clipped on air, but it's definitely part of the, 5-minute or whatever it is video that goes viral. He says, like, have you ever been, Jessup Reisnick is saying, like, have you ever been in a situation before? And he's talks about, this one time when this guy is talking about this girl who's his, like, and he has this violent reaction to perceived threat. And when, and so I'm not saying that violent reaction is chill or okay. What I am saying, is that in different contexts, we, call that stand your ground. And so when, 100%. When self-defense is able to, stand on its own, and when a story about like heroism and bravery continues to like remain what it is, instead of, this story had to be revised because we didn't like how he responded to.
And I think too, like, it's interesting to think about, and this is not talked about in the documentary, but the way it becomes like a feedback loop. So like the idea of him being this vigilante who saved this person. Yeah. And then they find him with a list or with a whole thing about like sort of vigilante justice against pedophiles. Yeah. And it's like, that isn't, there's no signs in the early interviews that that's a way, but there's a way that these things get taken up and then it gets
but there's also a whole context that, if we take him at his word, is a just web of PTSD response from his own traumas. Yes. So like, anyway,
it goes back. I mean,
at the very beginning of the documentary, we hear Jessup saying, like, here's what he could have been. Here's what he could have had. But he ended up on trial for murder instead.
But I don't think he could have ever... I think that's what's tricky, is there's this idea that, like, it's like the very thing that made him go viral, is also the very thing that is inseparable from the things that made him kill at least one person. Sure. Depending on the stories, right? Sure. And you don't get to separate those out. Like, you don't get to say, like, well, if he could have taken advantage of his fame and signed a reality TV contract, then this whole thing would have been a work, and he wouldn't really be the genuine person who yells smash, smash, smash and carries a hatchet, or like, you know what I'm saying?
10,000%.
Like, it's so like we want, it's like
it's also the thing that we find endearing is also what makes him fail at the scripts we need him to perform.
Right.
And so everybody just seems so put off and like low-key offended that he did not value the wealth and fame in the way that they thought he should. Like,
it was all
they wanted him to be grateful instead of peeing on a.
Well, and they all wanted him. Well, but see, I actually don't think they wanted him to be grateful, because it wasn't that because that makes it seem like it was some sort of like moral, like it was some sort of moral or immoral or impolite reaction. It was that they wanted him to want it so that they could glom onto it, right? Like the only reason that they want him to want it is so that they can get him to. Do a reality show that'll make her money as a producer.
I think it's either. I think it's okay. So it's the Life of Brian moment where if he were just like if he remained just, oh my God, I cannot believe this is like Little Orphan Annie to the magnanimous like benevolence of the reality world's Daddy Warbucks, then we would love that. Yeah. And so like, no, I'm not the Messiah. Only the true Messiah would say that. But then if he also was like, if he stepped into it and was like, yes, I am your reality star, then that would be fine too. Then he's the Messiah too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think it works either way.
Well,
and he didn't do either of those things.
Right. Right. Because, but also because he didn't have, not only did not have the interest, but it wasn't like he wasn't playing the game at all. And that just made him, eventually just made him disposable, which is why I think it's interesting about how much, like, that the reporter still gets a call from him in the middle of the interview.
Dude, and the reporter clearly still gets paid for the interviews that he's willing to give.
Oh, he's had
old
Jessup had quite the glow up.
He's had a glow up, but like it's just regardless of, like, I'm not even super. I am interested in Kai's humanity as a person who shares oxygen on Earth, like, for sure. But I don't. It's not. I don't have any insight in the way that, like, I think people try to have about, like, no, this is the real story and this is the real Kai. Like, I don't know. That's none of my business. What I do think is our business, that and thus worth talking about, is like charisma. Something we call charisma tells us about ourselves. And so what is it about ourselves, again, as ever, consumption habits, our needs, our wants that create a Kai. So I do feel like it's important to, because I said that we only hear about the, from the prosecutorial space about Kai's murder trial. I have gone down quite a rabbit hole, Mike.
Ooh.
This
is your version of me diving into One Taste.
This is yes, it is. And I don't
go back and listen to the One Taste episode where I got dive deep into the federal investigators.
It's not a I didn't really love the rabbit hole, I have to be honest. I found it really exhausting because it doesn't matter why. But I do feel like it's important to at least present just thoughts from that space. So
thoughts from the rabbit hole with Miranda Simmons.
Ugh, I would not listen to that podcast. I'm never making that. Okay, so Kai from jail, we do see in the documentary, his saying in his characteristically, like, when he's passionate about something, he's like really expressive about it, and he's talking real fast and saying that, like, people are used to victims not being believed, and rapists, when they do go to trial, being presumed innocent and receiving that baseline legal courtesy. But this is not a rape trial. The rapist is dead. This is a homicide trial. And self-defense against rape is a right, he says. And that, that's true in New Jersey. And I'm sure that there are complexities about that, depending on context, blah, blah, blah. But that is the fact of the matter, were he to be believed.
Right.
But the burden was on me to prove intoxication and rape. And I'm not being presumed innocent. And so we do hear him say that. We get that little piece of something. But there's nobody to corroborate him.
Right.
There's only Jessup saying, I want to believe because I care about him. In the, there's a letter. So one of the things that I found in this rabbit hole, there's some interesting pieces from NJ.com, New Jersey's local affiliate or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there was a letter that he wrote that some of his supporters posted, wherein he says the UCPO, the Union County Prosecutor's Office, seems to think that because I'm an indigent illegal immigrant from Canada, they can violate my procedural rights without consequence. This is an outrage.
Wow.
So, okay. This is the other side of the coin. There's an investigative reporter named Philip Fairbanks.
Okay.
He wrote a book called Smash, 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 The True Story of Kai the Hitchhiker. This was published in 2023. It is published with, so I guess this is the limits of the rabbit hole that I was not willing to, I don't know. But
being able to read the notes ahead of this statement makes it better.
I hit a wall and did not try to scale it. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
He was published with Is It Wet Yet Press.
Okay.
That seems to be a platform touting anti-cancel culture, free speech. And that can go lots of different ways, you know? So I didn't really... I just kind of left that alone. And the ostensible website for the book, because I also listened to some interviews with him, and he talks about this website that accompanies the book, where he's got this evidence locker where you can see all of these pieces of evidence yourself. And I was willing
You're about
to try
to
to scale,
do your own research.
Correct. I was trying to scale that wall. But then when I went to the website for the book, it now just leads to Amazon's link for the book to buy it.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So you ordered a copy, right?
No, that's incorrect. But so I don't know. But here are some of the things that he brings up that I feel it important to at least, give a little tiny bit of airspace to.
Okay.
He talks about there being a rape kit performed on Joe Galfi, but not on Kai. That doesn't make any sense. If that is correct, then that doesn't make any sense. He talks about the connections between Galfi and officials in Union County, like the presiding criminal court judge, Robert Mega, who eventually recused himself when Kai said that Mega's son was on Galfi's speed dial. That Mega and Galfi used to be partners in the same law firm. That Joe Galfi's brother is James Galfi, who was a former deputy police chief, who was allowed to enter Joe's house, which was an active crime scene.
Oh, wow.
And who implicitly tampers with it, runs a dishwasher and stuff. So they can't collect evidence from glasses and things, which was part of Kai's story.
Right, they had beers in the glass, and was there drugs in the beer? Right.
Exactly. So, and he also, Philip Fairbanks talks about the fact that he was in solitary confinement for so many years. This is cruel and unusual punishment. And he has, so it ranges from those kinds of, there was potentially evidence tampering and a withholding of his human rights to small stuff, superficial stuff about the police used the fact that Kai cut his hair as
right. He was
evidence
trying to hide who he was.
Fairbanks is it was May. it's hot.
Right. You can't have it both.
He could have cut his hair.
You can't have it both ways. If the person is unstable,
yes,
and unable to do logical things,
yes, you
cannot then use logic as your explanation. Like,
you know, so and he also talks about the the fact that the joint that he shared with McBride initially was, you know, there was nothing found in it,
right.
blah, blah, blah. So he has lots to say.
Yeah.
If anyone is ever interested in the kind of defense context for Kai's story, it is easy to find.
Yeah. If someone wants to read that book and email me a review.
Oh, man. There's lots. There's lots. But so yeah, I think that we try to tell our own stories though. So
yeah, I mean,
what's your takeaway?
My takeaway is there's a thing at the end about the media's fault, and the media. I think there's this thing because of our current political moment and the desire, the problems of disinformation and attacks on the quote unquote media, and you know, so and so can't be in the White House press room or whatever. Like, I think the media as a category somehow both involves like the New York Times and the Associated Press and like the Pat McAfee show. I mean, you know, and I think the media wants to talk about the media, but I think individuals, we often we forget the fact that the media, we are the media. Like we are our attention,
yes,
our eyeballs, literally our clicks are the things that keep the media going. And so like so much of our attention,
and that keeps a story in the media makes it drop. Yeah.
Like literally it's all about our own attention. And so the moments, you know, it makes me think twice about when I see some viral video or whatever, okay, well, what signal am I giving the media by spending my time on this, right? Sure. And to what extent we can easily, like, I mean, this is, I'm internalizing your message, Miranda, that we use the media to separate ourselves from our own complicity.
Oh, I thought that you were going to say that you're worthwhile. Oh. And I was like, yeah, no, you are.
That's going to take a lot more time.
But yes, we are complicit.
Wait till I get to my cult favorite.
We're worthwhile and we're complicit. Both of those things are so true.
But I think it's, you know, it did make me feel better when we're thinking about the 2010s internet. And now I like the fact that if I'm watching a TikTok video that I find hilarious, it's probably made by the person who posted it most of the time. And I can feel like, okay, like there's a thing where it
makes you feel like it's like a cyber local business or something.
Well, it makes me feel, it makes me feel like I'm not, like, I know what they're, like, this person is trying to get my attention. What they are doing, I find entertaining, and so I'm giving it to them, right? As opposed to,
feels more straightforward.
Right. And there's a way that, like, you know, the reality TV producer, and there's that phrase that comes up every time something horrible happens in reality TV of like, well, they knew what they signed up for. And it's like very clear that Kai had no idea what he signed up for.
Absolutely.
And insofar as...
well, he thought he was signing up for a limo full of weed. Like literally that's all he thought he was signing up for.
Yeah. I also think they gave him that skateboard because it was brand new on the underside. But yeah. And so at least I feel like there's at the level of a consumer, this was a kind of opening up to think about, like, that legacy media does depend on finding quote unquote genuine people, which have to be genuine enough to be genuine,
right? But
not so genuine that they don't understand the rules of the game,
right? We want you unpolished but following protocol,
right?
Like somehow.
But then once you learn the rules of the game, then we get to the follow-up story about how you're actually a big phony, right? It's like the guy in the sweater who asked the question at the debate, and everybody's like, "Yeah, that guy is great," and it's like, "Oh, wait, actually, he's deeply problematic." Like we want the both sides of the moment because both of them get attention. But it helped me think about, okay, what am I? Like where am I placing that attention, because it's literally monetized.
Sure.
You know,
my takeaway is connected to that for sure. Like I think so much would be so different if we listened to what people say about themselves and just take it at face value. Like, if we did, we'd probably have taken more seriously Kai's like immediate admissions of his own violence and his allegations of others' violence. Like we would simultaneously not kind of romanticize him as this innocent do-gooder hero.
Yeah.
And we would also potentially have more to say about like what other people might have done. We have also heard him say like, rather not. Rather just go like smoke weed in the Bay Area and like left that alone. We would have done that if we like listened and just, okay, face value, man, whatever. But we're so compelled to be the authors of other people's experiences, you know? And this is just no exception from like what role he played in the Fresno incident to what kind of personality showed up for late night to what he said his story was in the murder trial. Like at every turn, people are trying to write his experience.
And
I'm not saying that he is some untarnished, reliable narrator of experience.
Right.
Like none of us are, but none of us is, I should say. But like, it's,
No, I mean, and from that angle, which I agree with, it really, Jessup, our newsman, his like real sense that he knows better for Kai. Like, no, man, like I like, and that because I think we take him, I think, at face value,
his word,
right? And he seems genuinely thinking he was doing the right thing for this guy, you know? And
I believe him.
Yeah, but and that right thing was also, but that right thing was also kind of like, I'm gonna tell you, like, you need to do it this way.
Like, I think that he is. I did not. Okay, I was a little baffled about like why we kept seeing pictures of his beautiful house and pool. But regardless, I'll take him at face value that he just wants the best for Kai. Sure, but but he shares, whether he is as like overtly kind of reality TV slimy as like the producers or like brand managers of shows. They all have in common a general assumption that someone has to want wealth and fame.
Right.
Obviously. And because he doesn't seem to hold that same value system, their brains just break, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
No, yeah. Doesn't everyone should want to be famous? And it's like, not really. Some people just want to smoke weed in the Bay Area.
Who goes first with cult favorite? I think you do.
I go first?
I don't know.
Yeah, my cult favorite, sure. My cult favorite is a song that I heard a day or two ago. It's called "I Don't Like Who I Was Then" by the Wonder Years. As
Who You Were Then was also worthwhile.
Oh yeah,
the Wonder Years.
It's
okay.
But as an undermatured 40-year-old recovering emo kid, a song where a dude.
You're just
What?
I'm sorry. You're
just reading it off the.
It's like, it sounds like you're about to give a speech, like as an undermatured 40-year-old. Give it to us, Mark.
All right,
give it to us.
This is the episode. I gotta get the video working finally.
Oh my God, I'm weeping.
As an undermatured 40-year-old recovering emo kid, a song where a dude sings about genuinely trying to be a better person, and it has the lyric, like I'm working Babyface out of Mid-South in the 80s, I kept a blade hidden in my wrist tape. Just sort of goes straight to my heart in a lot of different ways.
Oh, geez.
Also, I just realized that like you actually understand what that lyric means now, so that's also important.
I do, and I really do appreciate that. And I'm sitting next to, so I do hope that the video works at some point because one, my reaction will not seem quite so outsized, because otherwise I'm just like laughing like a lunatic for no good reason. Secondly, I'm sitting next to, I think this is Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A little Hulk Hogan action figure, and I don't know who the other one is, but I assume it's a wrestler.
It's the Undertaker, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I should have done my stings over there too. The one I got at the thrift store last week.
Right.
Anyways.
You got some luchador masks.
Yeah.
Are those with the anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning. I'm a slow study, but I'm learning.
Go. It's the Wonder Years album comes out soon. It's like an early release from the album. I'd not heard of the band until the couple of their songs that have been on Spotify. But yeah,
okay.
I don't like who I was then. It's good.
Aww.
It's great.
Well, we like you
it's
just
a
as
good.
you are.
It's like this isn't me, but it's like if Saves. Do you know the band Saves the Day?
No.
Okay. It's like if those of you out there who know the band Saves the Day, it's
I don't like a band that's a phrase.
Like if Saves the Day, when Saves the Day grows up and becomes divorced dads, that's what this sounds like.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe speaking of music, sure. My cult favorite is so there's a podcast called Lost Notes, and the brilliant Hanif Abdurraqib has, in the second season of that podcast, to Chan Marsh or fuck, you'll have to see. We'll have the video, but you'll edit this out of the sound bit. Sean is how you pronounce it. I'm just reading it instead of so. He's got like a letter to Sean Marshall, the lead, the front woman of Cat Power.
Yeah.
And Hanif Abdurraqib is a brilliant music critic and essayist and poet and just general empath about town. And his there's a really cool third season of the podcast as well, where he like examines musical moments and figures in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Actually, specifically 1980, like that year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so like there's a episode that reckons with the deaths of John Lennon and Darby Crash, the frontman for the punk band Germs.
Yeah.
Anyway, they die inside of a day of each other. And both are examples. The letter to Sean Marshall, and who came here in Tuscaloosa. I saw her perform in I think we talked about this maybe.
This has been mentioned once before.
Yes. So his letter to Sean Marshall, and then also like what he does with, musicians in 1980 are examples of attending to lots of context with lots of empathy. And that's one of his trademarks, but just like, thank you, Hanif Abdurraqib, for attending to context and,
May we all attend to context.
But also doing so with empathy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I
felt like this story was one that did not have a lot of context and also not a lot of empathy. So
yeah.
I feel like a lot of these documentaries are examples of that.
There's a whole other question to ponder, but I have to go teach a class about the role of the documentary itself within the fame of Kai. Also, Darby Crash, the pro wrestler Darby Allin got his name from Darby Crash and Gigi Allen. Yeah.
Huh.
That's how he came up with his name.
Well,
there you go.
There you go.
And
look at that. Look at that segue.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
No,
to me laughing and coughing.
Our audience
throughout.
at home will not realize what a struggle this episode was to put together from the very beginning. But it was a joy. It was worth it. A challenge
and a joy.
It's always worth it.
We couldn't get the microphones figured out.
Yeah. It was worth it though. It was good. So we will be back in 2 weeks.
That's right.